this point where I would think, because of marketing, that once I healed something, once I finally, truly, wholly accepted something, that I would no longer deal with that it would just like not be something that would ever come up again. I would have this undeniable confidence. I would look the best I've ever looked. I would have these incredible habits that would just never go away. And welcome, beautiful soul, to the Intuitively Connected podcast. I am your host, Rylee June. I am honored to be your intuition master coach and empowerment leader who has spent the past half a decade perfecting a method to walk you through deep cellular transformation so that you no longer need healers to help you thrive in your life. I have had the honor of supporting thousands of women across the world and watching them move through deep transformations, from finding themselves, ridding the limiting beliefs and hurt of their past, finding that deep soul intuitive connection that we all desire and seek, and having them walk away a more empowered and connected version of themselves, thriving in so many different ways. This podcast is here to bust down the new age deceptive, manipulative energy tactics that are often found in the spiritual industry, share incredible guests transforming lives with specialized gifts and modalities to not only equip you with the knowledge of what to do, but to inspire you to take that action so that you can rise and thrive now and in your future too. From intuition, faith, mindset, emotional intelligence, physical care, and so much more, this weekly dropping podcast every Monday will give you the dose of knowledge you have been praying for. It's time to get you intuitively connected now. Are you ready? Let's dig in. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to another session. Originally, this was going to be an episode about breaking down your spiritual gifts. And I'm also feeding baby at the same time, so there may be noises. He tends to poop a lot, so that could also be in this episode as well. Forewarning. But life doesn't stop just because things change or things have been added to your docket. And I think what's really beautiful about this episode, and actually shifting it from what was originally going to be about your specific spiritual gifts, which I will still do an episode about, just not today. And then coming up over the next 3 weeks, we have some really incredible guests that I'm going to be sharing with you on the podcast to bring us to about the first or second week of November. And then I'm going to take a break from the podcast until the new year. Now, originally, I was just going to carry it on through, but for the month of December, I've really decided that it just gets to be a month where I am solely focusing on enrollment for the one-on-one coaching that is going to begin in the new year. And with this coaching, it's not only just you working with me, it's working with a functional body practitioner as well. So I am really excited to have Doc Jacques come on the team to support you. It is going to be optional. So you can enroll for one-on-one coaching with me, and we'll work on the mind, emotional, and spiritual connection that you get to develop to overcome your past, your limiting beliefs, really step into that space of empowerment, whether it is for business development, for your spiritual business, getting started, or growing it from 0 to 5 to 10K months. There we go. Or it's for you just to really step into a whole nother level of uncovering, understanding, and discovery within yourself. Believe it or not, everything in life is truly a mental game. And then there's the physical components that we get to bring into our awareness and into our practice, which is why I'm so freaking excited to have him come on board. We're going to do a couple podcast episodes together, so definitely stay tuned for that. But I will be talking about it annoyingly over these next few months because it is just something that is truly not offered in this coaching space, that I really do believe that when it comes to healing, you can't heal unless you have all pieces of it. And I'm going to go into a bit of a story about that in a moment. So originally we were going to do the 5 spiritual gifts, but I have just found this whole new renewed passion for life with an unfiltered voice. And there's been quite a lot of experiences that have shown up in my life over the past few weeks that have really brought a lot of insight to just a whole new layer of awareness, of healing, of self-understanding. And we're going to talk about some controversial beliefs that are perpetuated in the coaching and spiritual community that may actually be really holding you back. And a lot of this has really come into my awareness through these last couple weeks of taking a huge step back from everything in my business and everything in my life. I have had a very difficult time moving around. This birth was a lot more dramatic on my body than anticipated. And once the adrenaline and the shock wears off, you really have to sit with just like where you're at and really find a deeper level of acceptance for that. And of course, that's not everyone's journey and everyone's experience, but in this case, it was definitely mine. My last 2 births, I was able to pretty much like get up, walk around, not have too much of an issue. My hips were slightly out of alignment, but it wasn't like anything too much that would like hold me back in any capacity. This time, if I'm standing for too long or I walk too far, like honestly, I think I have like maybe a 30 to 45 minute span throughout the entire day. So I gotta like really be conscious of like when I'm getting up, how far I'm walking, what I'm doing. And when you have 2 littles, I have an 11-year-old that I have half the time as well, and then a newborn baby, you don't necessarily get to just like sit and do nothing. Like, I am so grateful for my son. He's 5, and he makes me think of Matilda, how like Matilda gets up and she makes her own cereal and she cooks her own eggs and, you know, she gets herself ready for the day. Like, that's very much how Philip is. And it's so great because when Charlotte's not here, he gets breakfast for Claire in the morning. They usually get up around 7:30. Mommy gets out of bed around 8:30 after like actually getting up, sitting up, feeding Noah, changing him, the whole routine. Then just like dealing with myself. I usually have to change my shirt because it's soaked in milk and all the things. Then I get to come out of the room and they've already had breakfast, which is really awesome. So it's been a huge learning curve having easy breakfasts prepared for them, whether that's the cereal, whether that's like pancakes that they can pull out of the freezer and they can just toast for themselves, like just like having things on hand, fruit that's accessible and readily available to them. So that has been just a whole new level of adjustment in my life because Phil is still working with my dad at this time. So it's me and all the children. And this is one of the things that I really wanted to get into where a lot of this awareness came from. So there's 2 things to this. I used to really struggle with a lot of body image issues. I used to think that I was like super overweight and like it didn't look very good and my clothes were too, like I was too fat essentially is what I would tell myself. Only to come to look back at pictures later on in life and realize that was like literally never the case. But as a young girl, you're subjected to all the things that you see on TV, in movies. We didn't have social media so much when I was growing up, other than like MySpace and Nexopia. Shout out to those of you who know exactly what I'm talking about. And MSN Messenger. So there wasn't really a lot of this like highlight reels that we would share with, you know, the internet world. But that still doesn't keep you protected from all the things that you still see in magazines and movies and TV and so on and so forth. And so when I was about 19, I went on this huge journey to really like get my body in a healthier space. What I didn't realize or know at the time is that you can do all the exercise in the world and you can do all the dieting in the world and you can even get the physical results that you want. But if you don't deal with the emotional and the mental capacities, or not even the capacities, but the mental and emotional limitations and thoughts and beliefs that you have that perpetuated those issues in the first place, laundry's done. You're not going to actually heal what it is that you're trying to fix, with air quotations around that, physically. And so I went on this huge journey to lose a whole bunch of weight. I dropped 20 pounds in like 6 months of just like hyper focusing on exercise, not even necessarily like unhealthy exercise. Like I had a trainer, we did proper macros and micro dieting. So it was very customizable, but it wasn't sustainable, because when I turned about 23 or 24, I really stopped a lot of those practices. And my weight fluctuated constantly. And so when I came into spirituality and all this work surrounding healing and mindset and emotions, and really looking at the stories that were perpetuating in my subconscious to even put me into those states where I didn't feel good enough or worthy enough or felt too fat or wasn't, beautiful or whatever, all the things that I used to tell myself, I would go through this journey and I would come to this point where I would think, because of marketing, that once I healed something, once I finally truly wholly accepted something, that I would no longer deal with that it would just like not be something that would ever come up again. I would have this undeniable confidence. I would look the best I've ever looked. I would have these incredible habits that would just never go away. And maybe you're sitting there and you're resonating with this too, and maybe not necessarily around body issues, but you've done a lot of work around money, or you've done a lot of work around the mother or the father wounds, or you've done a lot of work around, something else in your life, and you're sitting there wondering why you don't have this innate transformation where it just like no longer exists, that the limitations are no longer there. And what I realized, and what really came into my awareness over these last couple weeks, especially what all triggered it, was this postpartum body. And I have full acceptance of where I'm at. I don't blame, shame, or judge myself in terms of the fact that I don't have 6-pack abs 1 hour after Noah comes out of my body. I think we put these, and not even think, I know we put these very unrealistic expectations on our bodies when we have babies. And for my moms who have given birth, whether you have looked like in incredible shape afterwards or you have not, most moms have a significant recovery period. And it's not because you didn't exercise enough or you didn't eat well enough, or sometimes that is a factor, but it's not everything. Like, our bodies just genuinely need to recover. And so I went on this health kick at 19. I went through all this awareness and this healing and this emotional healing and mindset healing from like 24 to probably 28. And now I can't believe I'm almost 31 years old, which is insane, in February. So like 5 months away. But in this trimester, or in this pregnancy, I have had a lot of like old thoughts surface. And after my first and second pregnancy, there was so much going on that judging myself wasn't even like something that I had time for. So now that I have time and I have space to actually integrate and be, and there's peace and calming, my mind is naturally, I'm finding, looking for reasons to be in chaos or be disturbed or be overwhelmed or be anxious, even though there's like legitimately absolutely not a single thing right now at this current period of time for me to stress and worry about. And so my mind is like trying to find something to focus on. And this was something that came up in the beginning of this pregnancy as well, where my mind was just like looking for all these reasons to panic. And I realized that no matter how much healing work you do, there will be circumstances and situations that present themselves in your life where you're really going to have to still continue to work on or to lean on the tools. It's just going to happen so much faster than it ever has before. So what I mean by that is I have this awareness that all of a sudden I want to judge my body. I'm not judging it, but I want to. I want to like point out that, I have abdominal separation. So if you if you give birth, sometimes what can happen is your abdominal muscles won't go back to the appropriate way of sitting. So normally they sit flat in your body. They'll sit kind of more open. So it'll give you this what looks like a pouch, or like I don't know how to explain this. But just Google it. That's how we're going to go. Just Google abdominal separation. So it can look like that. And for me, I had this after Clara. And then now with Noah, I'm having it come back again, which is perfectly fine. And I'm finding that I want to judge my body. And it's really interesting because as these thoughts come up, I have done so much healing around this that I can be very aware of it very quickly and change my mind, right? So when you go through your healing, it's not going to just never come up again. Eventually, you're going to have to learn how to just change your mind faster. And you do learn to change your mind faster because of how much you sit and you work on those thoughts and those beliefs and that energy and those emotions. And then equally on top of that, this is why I teach these 4 pillars of healing, not just from listen to me talk to you about what I think about this, but helping you understand how the brain computes this stuff, how it's signaled within your body, in your systems, not only just your nervous system, which is often talked about so much now in healing, but in your endocrine system, your blood systems, your circulatory systems, your skeletal systems, like all these different components where all this energy and all of these hormones get activated and pumped into your body, and can perpetuate thoughts and emotions that aren't in favor of what you're doing. So what I mean by that is, if you're someone who's constantly hyper stressed about, I'll just go based on what we're talking about right now. If you're someone who's constantly been hyper stressed about how your body looks, naturally your brain, every time you look in the mirror or get dressed or anything to do with your body, eat food, somebody talking about a body, picking up a magazine with somebody on the front cover of the magazine, you're naturally going to, he's trying to burp right now, so you're just going to come along the journey with me here for a minute. Naturally, your brain is going to pump out higher levels of cortisol, even if you're not intending to think negatively or terribly about yourself. You're going to see someone on a magazine, and naturally your brain is going to start pumping cortisol, and you're going to start feeling stressed out about yourself. Now you go through a healing journey and you realize, oh, okay, these are triggers in my life. These are things that I don't want to have happen anymore in my life. I get to instead celebrate this woman on the magazine. I get to talk about bodies with a healthier mindset without being emotionally triggered. I get to get dressed in the morning and really love myself and what I wear. I get to look at myself naked in a mirror and celebrate, my body and the babies that it grew, or the journey that it's been on, or whatever, right? Literally whatever. And eventually you start to decrease the amount of cortisol that gets pumped through your system. But at some point, something will happen. Maybe it's a traumatic death in the family. Maybe it's postpartum. And all of a sudden, your body is in a place where it's not what you have worked for it to be. So maybe you've done some light exercise, maybe you've done some more heavier exercise, maybe you've been more intentional about your eating, maybe you've surrounded yourself with better conversations so you don't feel super triggered about it anymore. And all of a sudden you end up in this situation in your life where, in this case, you have a postpartum body, and you start to have all these thoughts come back up again. The cortisol starts pumping back into your body. And then it's your job to lean on the tools that you have learned. And because you've done and spent so much time already working on this healing, it neutralizes so much faster. Okay, so it doesn't actually go away. Just your level of awareness and acceptance surrounding where you are and your ability to shift your thoughts and emotions and state of being gets to happen so much faster. And what is often promised in all things healing in the spiritual industry is that you're going to transform your life, and there's this underlining notion where it's just like never going to come back up for you again. And I want you to know right now that that is a complete and utter lie. because it does come back up again. It wouldn't be life if it didn't. You wouldn't understand that you've truly shifted, accepted, and healed something in your life if you were never triggered by it again and realized and were able to apply yourself in the moment to truly see the strength of how you have overcome something, right? If you're someone who's suffered from depression, I often see this with my clients, that they will have depressive experiences. They will just shift through them so much faster. So what would have had them in a state of depression for weeks or months now ends up being a day, maybe a couple hours, maybe something really big that they're moving through that they've been stuck in for years ends up being something that they work through in like a week or half a week or a day or a couple hours. So you eventually just learn how to process things so much faster. And that's where empowerment and confidence really come from. That's where you really get to find out the power that exists within you and your capabilities, because you realize the more you're triggered by the thing that you worked so hard to heal, and the faster you overcome the negative self-talk or the overwhelm or the anxiety or the anger or the resentment or the fear or whatever it is that was the emotion surrounding that circumstance before, you realize that it no longer has you held captive. It no longer takes over your life anymore. It's no longer the weight in which you cannot move forward because of anymore. And this is very controversial because what I see so often is, like I said, this promissory that you never have to deal with it again. And so many people would argue that, or I should say so many spiritual practitioners would argue that, well, in those moments, you just have to really lean on the universe, or you just have to go back into ceremony to clear out whatever remnants is left in there. And I wildly disagree with this, because what happens is when you have these states show up for you, and you've been fed this kind of false promise that you're going to be healed for good and it's never going to come back up again, then what happens is, if you don't address the mental, the emotional, and the physical components alongside why God becomes so wildly important versus the universe or goddesses or guides and so on and so forth, is that you will start to, there we go, I lost my train of thought. You will start to perpetuate these same old patterns and ideas and beliefs that something isn't healed enough, or you didn't do well enough, or you might need another ceremony to clear out more remnants of what's coming up for you. But the truth is that you don't need a ceremony. You never really needed a ceremony. You don't need to go through plant medicine healings, and you don't need to go through psychosis-induced experiences, and you don't need to go and get submerged in water constantly, or you don't need to bile the crystals or scan yourself with a selenite wand, or you don't need to sage yourself or go to a practitioner to heal your energy. And that's where the toxicity really lies within this industry, is that because the 4 pillars aren't taught together, the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual, with the emphasis highly and only on God through Jesus, is that every single time, without fail, I have watched my clients time and time again. Now, I don't push God and Jesus on people. I lead with that. I don't teach anything but that. And then that's for you to decide whether you want to accept that journey and run with it, right? But I'm not going to sway from the cleanest, clearest, purest way of healing and empowering yourself spiritually and inclining your gifts and developing your gifts spiritually. Because I'm not going to false prophesize to you. I'm not going to lead you to potentially work with demons or dark entities, though so many people want to try and walk themselves around the fact that, oh, well, it's not like that. Okay, prove it. Where's the scripture? Where's the text? Where's the books? Where's the proof that it's not those things? And there isn't any. And so for me, when it comes to teaching people about spirituality, which is all about expanding your consciousness, I'm going to ensure that I do it in the cleanest, clearest way possible, so that 1, I don't get sued, and 2, most importantly, you don't end up in a psychosis. So I digress. it is so wildly important to understand all of these components. And this is why not only do I teach it, but I'm also bringing on a specialized practitioner surrounding the body, because when you understand how to balance your body, not just a keto diet or cutting out gluten or sugar, like you really don't know what your body needs until you get personalized, customized testing done. And that was something that I learned with my husband with his heart condition. Is we went through a private clinic and he got private testing done to find out that things like cucumbers and chickpeas and certain types of fruits and certain types of vegetables that you would think are overall healthy for you don't actually digest properly in his body and cause an inflammatory response. So when your body is inflamed in any capacity and it continues to stay in that state over time, your body will naturally stress out. So it's not even something that your mind is perpetuating or creating a sense of stress within. Your body is just in of itself stressed out, which is naturally going to cause more anxiousness, more mental stress, and you might look like you fixating on money. Oh, well, I'm going to stress about money, right? When actually it's your body that's under stress and your brain is just trying to find something because it's unaware, lacks the awareness to understand what's actually going on. So one huge reason why I'm so excited about this collaboration in supporting you on a whole new level, and equally why I say that this isn't something that is that I have seen in the spiritual or life coaching industry, where there's this like powerful collaboration of not only teaching you the fundamental actual things you need to know about your mind and your emotions and spirituality, but also this proper support surrounding your body. So you can really walk away knowing the entirety of you. And that is something that is truly priceless, because when stress comes up or you want to develop something for a business idea or a side hustle, or you're a parent and you're triggered by loud noises like I have been, you can really go through and look at these things, right? One of the biggest things for me is I don't drink caffeine, but I have noticed that because my body is under mental stress about my limitations of movement, and that I have been tired given that I have just given birth to a child and we're up all the time and I'm constantly feeding him, it can be straining. And so I have been gravitating towards eating more sugar. And my body has become more inflamed and retaining a lot more water and is under more stress, which is naturally causing my brain to be under more stress, which is naturally causing me to be more exhausted. So I can look at these components with awareness about what I am doing, because everything always comes down to radical self-accountability. And I can look at, okay, it's not the money, it's not my kids, it's not this, it's not that, it's my diet. It's not accepting the support that people are offering me. I'm trying to like put on this brave face and do it all by myself. Moms, new moms, if people offer you support, whether it's, hey, can I do something for you? Yes, I would love a coffee. Yes, I would love a frozen dinner. Yes, if you have 2 hours or an hour to come over and just like chat, I'd love to see another adult human being. Yes, I could really use support surrounding this. People might not always say yes, but here's the thing. I have learned very, very quickly that if you don't accept the support that you're given and you don't just actually ask for the things that you need, you're going to constantly feel burned out. You're going to constantly perpetuate these ideas that you're not healed enough. You're going to constantly be in this lack of communicative state with yourself and with your external life, because you're not actually just communicating your needs, right? How many of you struggle with a undefined throat chakra? Meaning that there's so much of the inner silent child. You were suppressed as a child. You were maybe verbally abused as a child. You were constantly told to essentially sit down and shut up as a child. It doesn't always have to be by your parents. We go to school for 12 years of our life and we're told that every single day for 8 hours a day. right? So then we develop this inner silent child that doesn't ask for the things that we need, that doesn't speak up for the things that we stand for or that we value or that we see as wrong. We don't advocate for something greater. Like in my last episode, how I talked about the ridiculousness of trans men getting funded for surgeries. Like, motherfucker, where's my free pads every month? Like, let's get for real here. That's not me against people who want to transition. It's me against the system who thinks that that's like just acceptable. Or the fact that this is the only mental disorder, this gender dysmorphia that exists, where we actually just like pat people on the back and validate them. In any other mental issues, bipolarism, split personality disorders, narcissism, you actually address the mental problem. You don't just go, oh yeah, let's follow through with that and just validate all of it and, you know, walk you into even more of that problem. Like literally, this is the only mental disorder that exists. And I know that me saying this is going to trigger people. And I know, even based on things I post on social media, could potentially get me super lambasted for it. But I don't really give a F. I swore a lot in the last episode, so I'm really trying to tone it back for this one because I know a lot of you guys listen to this podcast with your kids in the car, right? And you don't have to agree with me either, but that doesn't mean that what I'm saying is false, right? I think I said this in the last episode too. Facts don't care about your feelings. And so we look at these things and it's like the inner silent child within you wouldn't feel confident or safe to speak up, right? About something like what I just said, or about your needs that you might need met. Or if somebody says, hey, is there anything I can do for you? And you just say, oh, no, I'm good. Thank you, though. I so appreciate it. If I need anything, I'll let you know. And then you literally never let them know. Raise your hands, even though you're listening to this and we're not in front of each other. Raise your hand if you have done that and you do that often, right? I'm even putting my own hand up because I do that too. But after this birth, something innately shifted within me where it's like, I can't be silent anymore. That inner silent child is gone. And when she comes up, and when she wants to choose a negative self-talk about the way that I look, or I'll get out of the shower and we have this huge mirror right in front of the shower and I'll see my body and my husband will walk in the bathroom and I immediately feel this sense of like shame come up. Like my body feels shame. My mind doesn't feel shame. I have like no regard for how I look. I'm so grateful for my body. It birthed this beautiful child. You know, it gets me through everything that I need to in a day. I am so happy with it. You know, sure, 6-pack abs would look nice, but I never had that to begin with. Never worked for it hard enough any other time in my life. So like super unrealistic. But this sense of shame comes up in my body and I catch that experience and I go, ooh, that's interesting. And then I look at my body and I acknowledge it for its gifts, for the blessing that it is, for the healing that it has done, for the delivery that it has gone through. And then I'm perfectly fine. The shame is gone. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't come up. And this inner silent child within me would have just like worked through it. Whereas like my husband is also very intuitive. So he looks at me and he's like, what just happened? Like, did you want me to leave? Like, did you want privacy? I was like, no, it was just really weird. I just felt this sense of shame. I wouldn't have said that before. I would have just like been, oh, no, I'm fine. I'm good. It's like now I'm just like actually communicating, which is really interesting because like I said before, I would have just like, oh, no, I'm fine. No big deal. And what it allows him to understand is that I'm not just this robot that's just constantly fine. Like I'm moving through things myself too. And it's actually allowed him to be so much more attentive to me now that I have been speaking up, now that I have been sharing these things. And he genuinely wants to pay more attention to me. Not that he didn't before, but he's going more out of his way to check in with me, to give me hugs, to just like genuinely be more affectionate towards me or, you know, say more compliments towards me. Which again, it's not that he didn't do that before, But it's just now that he understands my mind, I'm not just hoping that he figures it out telepathically. Women, if you're doing that to your husbands or your partners or your boyfriends, good luck. That's never going to work. You have to actually just speak to them and let them know what's going on. Oh, I think we need another bottle. Right, buddy? Yeah. You need another bottle? Because you got some hiccups? But it has allowed our relationship to become even more connective because I am actually talking about myself. And if you have a partner that you feel is very closed off to you, doesn't talk about their emotions, doesn't talk about the way that they're feeling, doesn't let you in on things that they're dealing with, stress, life, work, whatever, check in with yourself. Do you let them in on those things? Or do you find that you only talk to them when you've like really hit a boiling point and you're just like complaining? Because if you're only communicating with them when you've hit your boiling point, or when you're complaining about something, or when you're like slumping into the couch at the end of the day, completely overwhelmed and exhausted, don't expect them to communicate any differently, right? Men have to feel safe in order to share what's on their minds most times. Okay, not always, but most times. Masculine men are designed to be strong, to be the wall, to be the authority, to show up with strength. Emotions aren't something that they're taught to express. They're actually taught the complete opposite. Don't cry. You need to be stronger than that. Things like that. So when they get into relationships and partnerships, they need to feel that sense of safety and security and have that example that it is okay to do that. Again, not in all cases, but in most cases. And I find that for a lot of women, when they go through a healing journey or enter into one, that they become very frustrated with the lack of awareness or lack of emotionality that their then partner does not express. And again, that's a trigger point for you. There's something you're wanting, but you're also not communicating it. And if you're only communicating it to the point where it's like you're so fed up that they don't do anything about it, or you're kind of badgering them about it, that's not making them feel safe. And I found that with my own husband, that as I went through my journey and as I have found my voice, that I had to be that display for him, that it was okay to show emotions. I wasn't someone who was raised to feel necessarily safe to show my emotions. I was always told if I was crying, okay, it's fine. It's not that bad. Just stop crying. Go to your room if you need to cry. If I had emotions, go deal with it by myself. Go to the corner. If I was like, whatever it was. So I kind of grew up with that same sense of lack of safety surrounding expressing emotions. And then I, in the healing journey, would get frustrated that my husband wasn't talking about his past or wouldn't acknowledge, his father wounds or his mother wounds or his relationship wounds or whatever was going on. And I would constantly feel like I needed to almost like counsel him through his experiences, which I'm so grateful for knowing the 4 pillars, because then I could actually navigate and address what was going on that he wasn't saying through a series of questions where I could be like, oh, have you maybe thought about this? Or, did this maybe stem from this? Or, what about this aspect? Did you consider this? And so it would prompt him to have these bigger conversations to then allow him to open up about his own journey, his own struggles that were going on in his head, his stresses. And this is something that, and why I wanted to talk about this today, is because these are all different factors of everyday life. These are things that you cannot avoid or ignore. Maybe you or your spouse has a very stressful day. Maybe something happens financially. Maybe there's a health thing that comes up. Maybe you're going through something personally. Maybe they're going through something personally. Maybe there's a tragedy. Maybe there's a huge change, and there's fear and scarcity and anxiety and frustration and anger and worry and doubt and shame and guilt and all these things. But if we don't understand that these are going to be constant triggers in our life, right? Unless you're literally sitting on a couch, getting food delivered to you, only getting up to go to the bathroom, somehow your bills are perfectly paid, and you just like never move, there's going to be change. There's going to be disruptions. There's going to be compromise. There's going to be all these things in life that are going to constantly be a trigger, if you will, in yourself. And having those tools allows you to move through the acceptance of it, the awareness of it, the understanding of it, so that it's not a burden or a weight that you're carrying on your back anymore. You're expressing yourself. You're shifting your emotions. You're shifting your energy. You're aware of your thoughts. That's an interesting thing that's coming up for me. Wow, shame came up surrounding my body, getting out of the shower. I wonder what belief is still there, right? And it's this belief that I'm not beautiful enough when I'm naked. That was one of them, and I can't remember what the other one was. But these two things came up for me right away with awareness. It's like, wow, that's really interesting. So what's actually true about that? Well, neither one of them were. I am beautiful when I'm naked. I can't remember what the other one was. I should grab my journal. Anyways, I digress. I realized that both the beliefs that were creating this shame in my body weren't true. And so immediately it was like, ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, this is what's come up for me, babe. And he goes, oh, you know that I don't think that of you, and you know that you're beautiful, and I think that you're beautiful, and all these things. And he's, talked all these wonderful affirmations to me. And I'm like, yeah, no, it was really, really odd. Anyways, moving on. I'm perfectly fine. Like, I did the work around it. I don't need to go into a ceremony. I don't need to go do shadow work. I don't need to go pull cards. I don't need to go consult with a practitioner. I have the tools. I apply the awareness, and I shift through it on my own. And it's like a radical difference from before, where I thought I needed all these other people, right? And now this inner silent child within me is healed. I've moved through this need to keep everything in, where I just say it. And if someone doesn't like it, if it triggers somebody else's beliefs or experiences, great, good. If you're being triggered, it means that something's coming up for you to heal, to shift, to understand, to transform. And I think that that's what's so crazy about our society today is everybody needs all these safe corners. It's like, we don't need safe corners, because if you eliminate triggers, people become docile, dormant, and lack the self-accountability to actually create changes in their life. And so they'll fall into the victimhood of depression and ADHD and self-validation and narcissism and all these things that keep you in this state of negativity and like awfulness and self-loathing and blame the world and they did this to me and everything's happening to me, not for me, right? And it's like, no, everything's always happening for you. It's just whether you're willing to accept that it's your responsibility to deal with it or not. And I think that that's really interesting, because when it comes to healing, when it comes to overcoming your past, when it comes to no longer being triggered or weighed down by your traumas, it is about that radical self-accountability, that awareness, that ability to say, what's coming up right now? And to like take a couple minutes to work through it, or take an hour to work through it, or go and open your Bible and read some scripture and really put whatever it is that's coming up for you into perspective. The amount of times that I've done that in the last few weeks, where I've opened my Bible and it was the perfect scripture. I always recommend do it with the New Testament, because the old one, you really have to understand the concept of the stories, which is kind of like the moral foundation of life. Whereas like the New Testament is very much hope and direction and guidance. Not that the old isn't, but it's just, I find it's a lot clearer anyways, which I'm going to put in here right now. If you're not a part of the free Divine Expounder Facebook community, I highly recommend, it's in the show notes, to go and jump in and join. I'm going to be announcing the Bible study times for this starting in November. So I was actually really surprised, though I'm also like not surprised, how many of you were interested in doing a weekly Bible study. It's not going to be super long. It'll probably be 30 minutes a week, and very much like a discussion point of just like, we'll have a scripture that we all read, just like an open conversation about what comes up for us in terms of the scripture that we read, and then just like something to write out for ourselves at the end. And it's going to be really powerful, but something that we get to just really lean into more. I found that scripture has been so incredibly transformative in my life. And that was like a huge catalyst for me in terms of healing, where I could just really find that acceptance. Because when I walked out of the shower and I felt that shame in my body, it was like, God wouldn't shame me for my body. So why am I shaming myself for my body? You know, God designed me in this beautiful way to look the way that I do today. And, you know, how, not even just like how terrible for me to think that, but how, what's the word I'm looking for? How disrespectful to shame myself for a complete and whole and perfect design that He created, right? Like to show that sense of disrespect to Him for the amount of effort and attention and intention that went into creating me. It was like in that moment, I looked at myself and I was like, wow, there's actually nothing wrong with me. Sure, there's things I can improve. So either we're going to choose to do it, or instead of perpetuating shame, we're not going to do it and we're not going to judge ourselves for it. So it's one of those things, right? You get to understand that healing isn't just this like one shoe fixes all. One ceremony eliminates it forever. It's a constant thing. You just eventually move through it so much faster, where it's like, oh, this came up. This is the belief. Interesting. Hey, when somebody asks me, what happened? This is what happened. Oh, okay. Move through it. Great. All done. Like it was like a couple minute thing. And then that's it. Right? So I wanted to share this with you today because as we go into a new season, I feel like, having had many conversations with you guys in the DMs, that there's so many of you who are in new seasons of your life. And you're in this space where you're either in healing burnout because you've taken so many courses, you've been to so many practitioners, and you haven't really seen the results that you thought that you were going to get. And I feel like a lot of it has to do with literally what I'm talking about today. You were promised this kind of underlining false idea that you would heal it and it would go away permanently. And that's not the case. Or there's a lack of actual teaching or training that you don't have or needed to help you to understand what's going on within your mind, body, and spirit, so you can dissociate from those stories, or you can have a deeper level of awareness of what actually is coming up for you, so you can really assess, is this true or is this not? So you're either in like a sense of healing burnout, or you just like have lost a connection to a greater vision in your life, which is making it challenging, maybe bored, maybe overwhelming. Maybe you find that you've gone into this state where it's like nothing really matters right now, and it just kind of like is. There's not a lot of excitement. So you've lost like a connection from a greater vision, or you don't know how to put together a greater vision right now. And in some cases, it's because you literally just need to create space, which means that filling your time with even more menial tasks or chores or lists of things to do, or maybe you do need to clean up some of those lists of things that you've had on your list for a while, right? But you need to create that space so you can actually have the downloads and have the awareness and figure out what it is that you're working towards. Or in the sense of like boredom, you don't really have anything that's lighting you up right now. You've just kind of put yourself into this like dormant state. And when it comes to healing, when it comes to empowerment, confidence, moving forward, visions, feeling connected to life again, it's about presence. It's about knowing how to get into that space. It's about knowing that everything happens for a reason. It's about really having a deeper sense of connection to surrender, to the moment. And the amount of times I have had to practice surrender, which is pretty much like every minute of every hour of the day over the last couple weeks, has been wildly challenging, but also incredibly educating for me, because I can't move a lot. Or I'm choosing to honor my body to not move a lot, I should say. And I've had to surrender to that. I've had to surrender to the TV being the babysitter for my kids more than I'd honestly like to admit. I've had to choose to surrender that sometimes things around the house don't actually get cleaned up. And I am someone who likes to really keep my environment very tidy. The kids will play with some toys. It might stay out for an hour, maybe 2 at most, and then it all gets put away. Dishes do not pile up in my sink unless the dishwasher is running. It gets emptied and put away right away. Laundry does not stack up all over our house. It goes in specific baskets. It's tidied up properly. It's put in the washer and dryer. It's cycled through. We maybe have a pile build up while I do all the loads of laundry over like a 24, 48 hour span, but then it all gets put away. Like this is just how I am. These are things that I've always just really valued about myself and my environment. And so not being able to do that, the laundry going longer, dishes piling up, not being able to clean up the things that I want to, having toys out longer than I would initially want, and so many other things, not being able to do big grocery shops or go for walks, like literally having to sit on the couch, park my butt and not move. I've really had to just surrender to that. And so when it came to healing, I had to apply all the tools in the toolbox, really lean on God for the strength and the faith to know that this is temporary, that there's so many beautiful lessons in this, that I get to really surrender to this time. I get to see a whole new way of being and self. I've been quick to anger because I've felt so limited with my physical movement. So I've yelled at my kids more than I'd also like to admit. But this honesty and this transparency hopefully allows you to realize that you can course correct. You can apologize. It's actually taught me more about getting down on my kids' level and like acknowledging that, I'm sorry. Nobody should yell at you the way that mommy did. I want to apologize to you. You don't deserve that. Sometimes mommy gets really frustrated and I don't know how to control my emotions, but I'm working on it. So being able to have those conversations with my kids that I never have had before because of the awareness, because of the healing, because of the self-responsibility, because of choosing to really see things from a bigger angle, having the space to process, having the mental and emotional space to process, having God to guide me into humbling myself surrounding sometimes explosive behaviors, right? Like nobody's just exempt from these things, especially if you're a parent. Loud noises, I've talked about this before, are huge triggers for me. So my kids, they're loud, they're noisy, they make messes, they're crazy. But that has been super triggering for me because I can't just necessarily walk away from it. Like I just gotta kind of sit and stew in it. So it's also taught me to neutralize my emotions so much faster, which is something that I teach both in one-on-one coaching and in intuition immersion. So all of these lessons have been coming up, all of this awareness, all of this self-understanding. And this episode is really important because if you take anything away from it, just understand that you're going through life. You're going through a journey. There is not one specific way of doing it. You're not doing it wrong. Yes, there's always room for improvement, but as long as you're leading with like radical self-accountability, you're always going to come out on the other side. And if you need moments where you throw yourself a pity party, put a timer on, throw that party and let yourself sit in it. I've talked about this on another episode before. It's okay to go on to the island of despair, sadness, overwhelm, anxiety, anger, frustration. But make sure you hop in that boat and cross over to the other side of gratitude, awareness, enlightenment, understanding, acceptance, love, gratitude. I think I said gratitude twice. Because you get to choose how long you stay in those spaces. And the more healing work you've done, the faster you get to shift through it. And again, it all comes down to perspective. So I hope this episode really served you today. I hope it gave you permission to really just accept where you are and to speak to what your needs are. And really, if anything, create some space so that if you are struggling with those things, that you can have the awareness to really process and move through whatever is trying to come up for you. No emotion is bad. They're all directing you into something greater or deeper. You just have to have the willingness to look and create the space to really see what's coming up for you. All right. I love you guys. We have some incredible guests coming up. If you are seeking that one-on-one customized tailored support, we are opening up applications November 1st for one-on-one coaching. We are going to open up for getting started December 1st and January 1st. We're going to do 2 rollouts. These are going to be 3, 6, or 8-month containers. If you work with Doc Jacques specifically, like you bring him on board for team support, there's the words I'm looking for. It is going to be a 6 or 8-month protocol because he has 4 stages that he moves you through. And for me, depending on what you're looking for, we can do this in 3 or, well, I'm gonna follow his lead. So it's actually going to be, I think what I switched it to was 4 or 8 months containers. So you can bring us on for both of those. If you want the most optimal amount of support, it's going to be in your best interest to go with the 8. However, we can still do incredible work in 4 months as well. Don't shortcut your journey. Really learn to take it all in. My clients who have gone through the longer committed containers tend to have the greatest results. And the reason being is because they're not trying to heal themselves overnight. They understand that it truly is a process. And even in an 8-week program like Intuition Immersion or a 3-day master class, you have to understand that the things that you're being taught are all application based. So you might get taught them over 3 days or 8 weeks, but if you're not applying them long term, you're going to see a very temporary result. Whereas when you have that coaching support, that team in your corner for a longer period of time, you have the space and the accountability to move through all the shifts and changes that will come up for you in a longer period of time, right? So I'll give you a short example and then we're going to close out this episode. So what I found with working with clients in 3-month containers is that we would hit some initial things right off the bat and we'd really do some deep work around that. And I always incorporate training because you have to understand what's going on for you to actually be able to overcome what is going on. As much as I bring you through self-reflection and hypnosis work. But I found that in my shorter term client containers, though there was great initial progress, there was always things that would come up for them that were on deeper levels that needed and required much more time for them to shift through, have the emotional and mental support surrounding for longer periods of time. And especially when you're working with the body, it's not a 30-day fix. It's not a 60, 90-day fix. You got to work through restoration of sometimes your gut lining, your brain-heart coherence, your neural pathways. Even in the spiritual and emotional work, you're creating new synaptic connections within your brain. That doesn't happen overnight, right? There's cellular changes you're going through on all 4 levels, and that truly requires time. Like integration isn't a weekend with ayahuasca, right? Integration is then the 6 months following, where all the things that came up through that ceremony are processed and healed and cleared. And not because of energy practitioners, but because of the applications of the tools, of the protocols, of the work, of the self-commitment, right? So that's why we want to do these longer containers, is truly for the benefit of your long-term success. You have to understand coaching is, unless you're going in for like a very specific dialed in thing, like typically in business, this works really well. If it's like you want to develop a marketing strategy, or there's something you need to do around like copy or design or development of something or sales, right? Even then, that's more of a long-term game still. But if it's like a specific hyper-focused thing, easy. You can do shorter containered stuff. When it's like a long-term transformational thing, business, right? There's ebbs and flows in business. Having a mentor long-term for business is so much more important than just jumping from coach to coach to coach. Same with life or health stuff. Really having people in your corner that are personalizing, customizing everything to you. It's not a cookie cutter script. It's genuinely focused on you, understanding you, discovering you, uncovering you, moving through all the facets of you and teaching you about that, so that on the other side of those containers, you don't need the support anymore, right? Like I have clients who have gone through longer term containers with me where they're walking away, they don't need the support anymore, unless they're going into a hyper focus thing or a training thing, right? They have the foundational tools that have set them up for life. And that's why with these words, clearly getting to the end of this episode, with this new one-on-one coaching container, with the option of bringing Doc Jacques on your team, it is very much focused in dialing you into fully understanding you, right? So that is what we got going on. You can join the waitlist in the link in the show notes, RyleeJune.ca, the number 1 on the number 1 coaching, one-on-one coaching, or I should say / one-on-one coaching. And it talks about my portion of the work we're going to be doing. And my team is getting all of Doc Jacques' work on there as well. So that should be up within the next week or two, just going more in depth surrounding just him and his work and his protocols. You can also check him out at docjacques.com, or his Instagram is doc, DOC_JAQUE. I had to think about that while I said it. And you can even just go ask him questions directly as well if you're interested. So we're really excited about this collaboration. We're really excited to help you take your life to a whole new level of understanding and transformation. So that's all the good things coming up. All right. I love you guys. As always, I'd love to hear what you took away from this episode. Hit me up on Instagram at RyleeJune.ca and let me know. Let's have a discussion. All right. Sending you all the love. Before you go, I would love and appreciate so much if you could take a moment of your time to leave a 5-star review. It helps me to be able to get this message out to so many more in the world, and I am so truly thankful that you choose this place to be every single week. Until next time, don't forget to find the magic in today.